I will always remember that fateful night in August 1977 when I saw Star Wars for the first time. Darth Vader's entrance in the film filled me with both fear and complete awe. The long flowing robes, the gargoyle-like mask, and the sound of his mechanical breathing instantly captured my attention and my imagination. Even though the character had only 12 minutes of screen time in the entire movie, Vader was always, to me, the face of Star Wars. So this is the first commercially available Darth Vader helmet produced by Don Post Studios. My mom bought this for me from JCPenney's for about $30 back in 1983, months after Return of the Jedi was released. As a 15-year-old, I was not sophisticated enough to see that the design as well as the size of the helmet varied greatly from the helmet in the movies. But I treasured this piece as if it were straight from the movies. I wore this for Halloween at school that year, and I naively allowed some of my fellow students to handle it. One of them dropped the dome of the helmet, and it cracked off the center point that goes above the nose, which was actually pretty sharp and could probably do some damage. A few years ago, I filed down the jagged point, much like how it was done for the helmet's appearances from Empire Strikes Back onwards. About 5 years ago, I purchased a deluxe adult Darth Vader costume from Ruby's for about $40. I wore this costume for a night out on Halloween weekend and for the trick-or-treaters on Halloween night, even though I knew it was a sad imitation of the real thing. I was then resigned to the fact that this would probably be as close as I'm going to get to achieving the real thing. 2 years ago, I put together an authentic 1966 Batman cosplay, which was transformed into a full-size display, complete with the face of Adam West. It was both fun and challenging to put this together, and I'm very proud of the finished piece. Once it was completed, I felt that I was ready to make a life-sized, screen-accurate Darth Vader of my own. I decided early on that this was going to be a display-only costume, as I don't have the patience, the stamina, or the physique to pull off a Vader cosplay. Instead, this would be the crown jewel of my Star Wars collection. As for which version of Vader that I wanted to recreate, that was an easy decision. To an untrained eye, Vader looks the same in every film, but when you do your research, you're going to find that there are differences between every costume that appeared in the series. I found that a majority of Vader costumers like to recreate the look from either The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, most likely because they loved the glossy and shiny look of the helmet and the armor, and because the character was the most imposing in those two films. But for me, it was always going to be A New Hope, or as I always called the film, Star Wars. This was my first Vader, the one that made such an impression and impact on me at age 9. He is also the most alien, more machine than man, in comparison to his other appearances. The chest box on the original costume was larger than in subsequent versions. The robes were worn over the shoulder armor, with the edges running closer to the sides of the chest box, so you saw very little of the leather suit underneath. From Empire onward, the chest box was reduced for a more comfortable fit for David Prowse, and the robes were spread out to show off more of the bodybuilder's physique. But I preferred the original, as for me, it is the most iconic Vader, the one that brings back the memories of becoming a first-generation Star Wars fan in the summer of '77. For many Vader wannabes, the search for Vader costume pieces begins and ends with the Ruby Supreme Darth Vader costume.
Don't do it.
Originally retailing for about $350, it is nearly impossible to find an online dealer who is not selling it for less than $1,000 on the secondary market. Yes, in the short run, it would be less expensive than acquiring more authentic costume pieces one by one. And you would have a costume that would impress your friends and even be good enough to display as an authentic costume at the Hollywood Museum. No lie, that is actually a Ruby's costume at the Hollywood Museum. But in the long run, it is, under closer observation, a rather cheap looking and sad imitation of the real thing. And if you do want to go for approval into the 501st Legion, it would take a lot of time and money to modify the costume. You're better off spending your money on more quality pieces. Recently, Jazzwares put out their version of a high-end Vader costume, currently retailing at about $1,000. From what I've seen, it is of much higher quality than the Ruby suit, and it does come with a neat storage case. It would make a good costume for your next Halloween party or even at your next sci-fi convention. But again, you would need to do a lot of modifications to make it look screen accurate. For display-only options, there is the even more outrageously priced Sideshow life-size Vader, which may look impressive to the casual Star Wars fan. But at over 7 feet, it is way too tall. This is supposed to be the New Hope version, but in that movie, Vader's chest box does not light up. The cape and robe look as if they are made of the same cheap Halloween material as the Ruby's costume, and the way that they fall on this display just doesn't look right in my eyes. A more affordable option for a display-only Vader, but just as inaccurate, is Home Depot's Holiday Animatronic display. If you're not worried about accuracy at all, then this is probably your best option for a display-only Vader. Looking through the forums, I learned of the EFX Precision Craft replica of the original Vader helmet. This helmet is based off the original mold done by Rick Baker from the original screen-used helmet sculpted by Brian Muir. Baker was tasked to recreate a handful of helmets for use at public appearances to promote the film around the world. Like the prop used in the film, the face mask is asymmetrical, with gunmetal gray highlighting the cheeks, the nose ridge, one side of the mouthpiece, and the neck, and the eye lenses are of a dark amber color. The EFX replica helmets will run you at least $1,000 on the secondary market. Fortunately, I bided my time, and in 2023, EFX did another limited run, so I was able to pre-order a new helmet for a reasonable price. I did briefly consider the Black Series helmet from Hasbro, as it was a more affordable and available option. I did get to see one up close at a local comic store, and though I thought it was pretty impressive, the design of the mask looked a bit off, especially with how wide the mouth looks. And much like my Don Post helmet, it looks just like a toy in comparison to the EFX helmet. Many cosplayers and collectors of the New Hope Vaders like their helmets, armor, chest boxes, and belts to be weathered. Some want their helmets to look exactly like the screen version, down to the brush strokes on the metal gray parts and the C scar on the right cheek. I didn't want to modify my EFX helmet at all, as I didn't want to incur any more expenses, and I thought the piece was perfect and beautiful as is. So I decided with my display to go with an unweathered look for the entire costume, as if this Vader came off the factory floor before it got battle damaged prior to its appearance in Star Wars. It doesn't really matter whether or not the Vader is entirely screen accurate for me. I'm very pleased with the result, and that is all that matters. With helmet in hand, my next purchase was a standard size male mannequin in black plastic. I put a black winter hat over the mannequin's head in order for the helmet to fit snugly. I bulked up his chest, shoulders, arms, and midsection with bubble wrap, packing tape, and saran wrap in order to get as close to David Prowse's measurements as I could. Prowse, who wore the costume in the original trilogy, was 6 foot 6 inches, and in costume he stood at 6 feet 8 inches. Hayden Christensen is 6 foot even, and when he wore the costume for Revenge of the Sith and the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, his Vader stood at about 6 feet 6 inches. My mannequin is only 6 foot 1, and with all the costume pieces, it stands at 6 foot 5 inches, just an inch short of Hayden's Vader. For many cosplayers, it's difficult to achieve the canon height of the character, even with lifts. I'm not going to worry too much about achieving an accurate height. It's taller than me, so again, that's all that matters. Working our way down, we have the chest and shoulder armor from Skunkworks Props in the UK. Normally for A New Hope, the gunmetal gray paint would be applied by brushstroke, as it was with the mask and armor on the film set. However, I requested that the paint be sprayed to match the finish of my helmet as close as possible, and I think they got it pretty damn close. I placed some bubble wrap under the shoulder pieces to help bulk up the silhouette. With both the cape and robe in place, this Vader should be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the real thing. Next, we have the chest box built by Dogtown Props in Germany. The New Hope chest box differs from the ones in the other films, and it is a bit larger. It does not have any text under the coin slots, and it does not light up. The straps that go over the shoulders and around the waist are made from real leather. I placed strips of Velcro on the shoulders to help keep the chest box in place. The belt was manufactured by Black Falcon FX, also based in the UK. It is a black leather belt that buckles in the back. The metal buckle attaches to the front via Velcro, and the lights on the belt boxes are powered by 9-volt batteries. The belt also includes the metal hook to hang the lightsaber hilt. This hilt is a replica made by Hasbro in 2007, and it has both the look and the heft of the actual prop. The gloves are from Ender Finders in the US, and they have the distinctive horizontal quilting that only the gloves in the first film had. The codpiece was crafted by Lee Richards, who came highly recommended as a maker of A New Hope codpieces. This really has the look and feel of an original codpiece from 1977 in comparison to a lot of other codpieces that I've seen in the online marketplace. This was actually a pre-owned piece from someone who was unable to complete their build. Other pieces that were also pre-owned are the 2-piece bodysuit and the shin armor, both manufactured by Crow Props. The suit is a size extra large for the top and large for the bottom. The pants were fitted with suspenders, and both pieces have black mesh on the back for ventilation. The shin armor has some wearing along the top edge, but it's hardly noticeable. The boots were actually a $20 find at a local thrift store. They are far from screen accurate, as Soviet-era military boots were used for the screen-used costume. But with the shin armor over them, they are barely visible. Plus, I needed to cut a hole on the back of the right boot in order to attach the mannequin stand so that the display can stand on its own and not have to be wedged to the corner of my room for support. The final pieces I acquired to complete the build are the cape and robe from Cinda Baird of Sabasco Creations. Cinda had been trained by Kelly Jo Boyd, a renowned creator of Vader capes and cloak sets, and she took over Kelly's business a few years ago. Cinda worked with me on getting all the measurements for the garments, as well as suggesting which fabrics to use in order to create a custom set for my build. I went with a heavyweight wool, as it looks the most impressive and authentic. The cape and cloak really tie all the elements of the display together, giving it much needed heft as well as menace. Seeing the completed build in front of my eyes brought back the feelings of fear and intimidation my 9-year-old self felt watching Star Wars for the first time. While assembling this display, I used lots of reference photos in order to dress it as accurately as possible, especially with how the chest box rests in relation to the shoulder armor, belt, and inner robe. When studying stills and screen captures of Star Wars, I noted that Vader's cape, chain, and leather collar are only visible while he's aboard the Tantive V4. For the rest of the film, the cape, chain, and collar are hidden underneath the mask. In actuality, all the Death Star scenes were shot prior to the scenes shot for the Tantive V4. The caped collar and chain for my display were made to go under the neck of the mask, which is the look that I prefer. The order of when you purchase your costume pieces and props can be vital in a successful build. I made a point to order the cape and robe last, especially as I was making the original 77 Vader. So I made sure that I had the right measurements with all the other costume pieces on the mannequin. So if you're thinking of making your own Vader for cosplay or display, I would suggest that you check out the Sith Lord detachment of the 501st Legion. They have an extensive list of what pieces you will need and what their requirements are for a screen-accurate costume if you are interested in joining a local garrison. You can sign up for access to their message board, or you can also join the Darth Vader props and Darth Vader cosplayers groups on Facebook. All are a valuable source for leads and recommendations for costume and prop pieces. The moderators and top contributors of these forums will help you find reputable sources and vendors of Vader props and costume pieces, and they will chime in if any questionable offers are posted on the forums. This is going to be an expensive endeavor. Be prepared to spend at least $2,000 for a complete costume. Budget your build wisely so that you don't break your bank account. If you're building your costume from scratch, be aware that it will most likely take at least a year or two to complete. These pieces will take a lot of time to make, as they are usually produced in small batches and not mass-produced. You can be vigilant in following up on your order status, but be polite. Your patience will pay off when you finally have that completed, screen-accurate Darth Vader costume. I really enjoyed the process of creating this. Even though I didn't make the individual pieces, putting it all together slowly and meticulously, watching it come together piece by piece, I really felt a sense of great accomplishment. I would imagine that there are many others, such as myself, who want to reach out and physically touch the childhood memory of a character that made such a huge impact on their life to this very day. To have him in front of you as big as life. It's a way of reclaiming your childhood. You remember how these characters affected your life and how far yet you've come since they've entered your life. After watching Star Wars for the first time, I wanted to bring that world home with me. It took a little while, but eventually Kenner put out all the action figures, the playsets, and the spaceships so that you could bring that world home. My Vader build is, to me, the ultimate action figure, and I will always treasure it and what it represents.